Good evening and welcome to this special Guy Fawkes edition of Have I Got News For You, as we light the blue touch paper, stand well back and then watch while it fizzles out embarrassingly. In the news this week, just outside Northampton, the exact location of the North-South divide is discovered. In Yorkshire, the water shortage is now so severe that householders are being forced to hide emergency supplies. And a strange discovery is made in Michael Barrymore's cellar. On the sperm of the devil, on Ian Hislop's team, a comedian who once worked in a Soho strip joint, which is why we're charging him £8.50 for a glass of water, Bob Mill. And with Paul Merton tonight, a stubborn single-issue politician with a chip on his shoulder about the English, that's except for viewers in Scotland, will be getting a pertinent and witty guest with an interesting slant on the devolution question, SNP leader Alex Salmond. And so with the dull thud of convention, we begin with round one, Ian and Bob, the start of a beautiful friendship for you.
Right, this is, oops, that's the lens that South Sea Islanders go to make sure Julie Chalmers doesn't turn up. It's John Major and Delors, who isn't the man who used to deal cocaine and make dodgy cars. That was DeLorean. DeLorean. It's,
in case his lawyers are watching.
Right, they all merge into
one. It's not Delors either, I think it's Chirac.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. I hate to be picky, and I know the frogs all look the same, but...
Now, you see,
this is another one.
I supported you against Paul, but now you've wound me up.
No, I've learnt my lesson. This week, no more Mr. Nice Guy. Major invited him over. He's the only person less popular in the world.
Well, actually, sharing nuclear secrets.
Oh.
And Chirac told Major it works.
Yes, it is the summit between the Prime Minister and Monsieur Chirac following French nuclear tests in the Pacific. Oceanographer Jacques Cousteau objected loudly to underwater nuclear tests as he was catapulted 5,000 feet over Tahiti. After the summit, John Major said he was proud that during the recent Bosnian conflict, British and French armed forces had stood shoulder to shoulder. Difficult to stand any other way when you're chained to a radiator by Serb guards. Paul and Alex, another French farce for you.
This is someone phoning up the Queen, a DJ from Montreal. This is the Queen saying no reverse charges. And this is people celebrating. This is people commiserating. And this is someone demanding a recount.
I thought I was a dustman and didn't get his Christmas box.
You wrote about this, didn't you, this week?
I did.
In The Independent, I seem to remember you writing something like, Scotland is not Quebec and Quebec is not Scotland.
Yeah, I thought I had a good twist to it.
Yeah. Geographically faultless, I must say.
Absolutely. There were similarities, between the Quebec autonomous and Scottish nationalists. We both lost.
Yes.
But they lost by not much.
Yeah, but things are moving in our direction.
Right.
Slowly.
Last 400 years, I think.
It's only 300.
Is it 3?
Time passes. We're having fun. Right.
It is the referendum over the independence of Quebec, in which 2.4 million said non, 2.3 million said oui, and 86,000 said je sais moi. And of course the hoax played on the Queen by DJ Pierre Brassard, pretending to be the Canadian Prime Minister. Following the hoax, the Queen was telephoned by a British impressionist pretending to be John Major. This time she responded with a volley of four-letter words until she realised it was just an impressionist. Tory MP Sir Teddy Taylor reacted immediately. This has extraordinary implications. If a DJ can contact the Queen, so can any lunatic, he said, as he picked up the phone and started dialing. Some hours after sending up the Queen, Brassard sent her a fax claiming that he hadn't meant any harm to her. I didn't intend to mock the Queen or the great nation which she represents. Now he really is taking the piss. Ian and Bob, a choice of viewing for you.
Oh, that's Greg Beardy.
No, that's Delors. That's
Channel 5.
Channel 5, who've won the
The Channel 5 bid.
the Channel 5 bid, which is good.
good choice of title.
Good choice of name.
Why Tony Satcher was in there, I don't know, except there is a law that he has to be on television. And Greg Dyke was the man responsible for Roland Rat, which is, I guess, why he was in there.
He was the only man Thatcher ever apologised to. That's amazing, because he used to employ her daughter.
I was apologised to the Australian guy, didn't he? Not to Greg Dyke. The Bruce Gingle guy?
Oh, was it Bruce Gingle?
Yeah.
Was he LWT?
No, he was GMT in Britain.
God, it's so confusing, isn't it?
It's very dull as well.
It's amazing there's a fifth channel, though, 'cause there isn't enough to go around the other four. And we're on twice.
Yes, I think that's definitely proof. A typical day's schedule will apparently include 2:30 US soap opera, 3 o'clock game show, 3:30 Australian soap, 4 o'clock repeat of Minder, 5 o'clock quiz show in which panellists have to describe something simple without using the obvious words, such as describing that schedule without using the word crap. Greg Dyke told reporters running a television channel is the best fun in the world. A bit of a slap in the face for Mrs. Dyke. Paul and Alex, joint question for you.
This is Claire Short on the David Frost show. That's had OXO. Go put it in your gravy. That is a very long cigarette, isn't it? Fancy a joint? Yeah, all right then. Yeah. And there he is at the back, having had one. And it's also about Claire Short saying, well, I think we could look at the possibility of legislation and, you know, decriminalisation and all that sort of stuff for cannabis, and they immediately said, oh no, we can't even look at it.
No, it wasn't so much look at it, it was thinking of it. Claire was told there was to be no thinking in the shadow cabinet. So she's got a dressing down.
Yeah, and
A dressing gown, that's nice.
Dressing down.
Christmas just round the corner.
and what was Mr. Blobby doing in all of that? Any idea?
Well, he's obviously had too much.
No, Chris Davis.
Yeah.
He was the Liberal candidate in the by-election in the summer, and Labour ran a campaign saying he was soft on drugs. But,
Just talking about soft drugs for a minute, that stuff that David Frost at the beginning has been sold a very dodgy little batch there, because if it crumbles that easily, then there's something wrong with it. I'm sorry, I'll just check the law, shall I?
If it's very crumbly, it's no good.
No, it's no good at all. You see, the whole point of it is that it needs to be quite solid, and then when you burn it, when you heat it up, then it should crumble. If it's crumbly, it's kind of the opposite of a brie.
Right.
But you also got to be careful if it's too hard, because you might be buying pure Dunlop.
I like the idea of it as OXO, and then you could have a sort of cannabis family all sitting around the table with mum.
Yeah. Having 15 Sunday lunches a day.
And so the chicks have flown the nest. Oh, that's really amazing, man. It's really sad, man.
So, Alex, are you for cannabis in the SNP?
I would have to think about that.
Right. It is Claire Short's remarks on the Frost programme in defiance of Labour Party policy about the legalisation of cannabis. The president of the Cannabis Legal Reform Group backed Claire Short's remarks and said that contrary to clinical studies, cannabis does not damage human lungs, impair memory, or damage human lungs. Paul and Alex, a joint question for you. Oh no, sorry, we've done that bit. On the Frost programme, Claire Short said that we should get some archbishops and chief constables and see if they can't organise the whole thing better, and maybe that includes selling them. A terrible slur on the police to suggest that they don't do a perfectly good job of that already. Which drug-crazed ramblings signal the end of this round, and the scores are as finely balanced as the referendum in Quebec, and about as interesting, both teams having 4 points each. Round 2 this week goes under the catchy title of Spot the Illegality. One piece of film showing a variety of images, some of which depict something illegal going on. All the teams have to do is tell us what laws are being broken. This week, it's off to the seaside.
Well, that's obviously pollution, isn't it?
And that haircut's illegal as well.
Having fun, that's illegal.
Letting dogs run in the sea, you can't do that.
Eating candy floss, EC directive, don't do that.
Yeah.
You can do that. That's chucking sewage in the sea, isn't it?
Imitating Russell Harty, that's against the law, isn't it? Oh, Welsh people, there are there.
Oh, thank there again.
And that's pick a pebble off the beach about using your hands competition.
Which is illegal, as we know.
illegal.
Yeah. Bit of a
Well,
shame.
it must be the contamination of the sea, the pollution of the sea. That's got to be one of them, isn't it? There's got to be a genuine illegality.
I don't think that is
I don't think it
illegal.
is. I think you're entitled to dump your rubbish where you want.
Those outfall pipes, they're legal.
I think the ice cream that they sell is probably illegal under EC directive. And I'm sure it's illegal to sing.
Because if somebody's drowning, you can't hear them. They're singing Men of Harlech or whatever.
You knew if it's legal.
Yes, because it's Brighton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be if it wasn't, though.
No.
No, no.
Oh, now you tell me.
I'm sure it's different in Scotland, isn't it?
It's
have to wear a vest on
It's
the
called
beach.
it's called in Scotland, and it's called a simmet.
It's called a what?
Angus knew that.
A simmet.
I've got
He's
several.
Scottish,
Oh, see.
allegedly. His mother's from Dundee.
Yeah, it's true. How do you know so much about me?
You sound targeted as a potential voter. Everyone counts.
Yes. Dogs.
They're illegal.
Where's there dogs and ice cream?
Dogs aren't allowed into the sea unless they've got scuba diving equipment.
I'll give you one for that because you're half right. The two outbreaks of wanton lawlessness suggested in that film were the consumption of ice cream and of candy floss on the seafront at Frinton, which, along with picnics and radios, are banned by the town council. And walking shirtless is banned in Frinton, apparently.
What if you walk along the beach with a mouthful of candy floss that you've previously eaten but not swallowed? Does a policeman smack you across the back of the head or something?
It would be an interesting court case,
It
certainly.
would, yeah.
Yes.
I might try it tomorrow and see what happens.
What if you wear a shirt and no trousers? We could have a great day in Britain.
Did you say cassette radios?
I said radios.
So you could play a tape recorder then? So you could walk along with the shirt, no trousers, a mouthful of candy floss, listening to a tape. And he wouldn't be able to touch you.
Yeah.
Nor would they want those.
Provided you didn't swallow.
You're not Tony Slattery's dad, are you?
You are, however, allowed to take your dog on the beach at Frinton, as long as it doesn't listen to the radio, bring picnics or eat candy floss, and just restricts itself to shitting all over the sand.
Oh, remember the old classics? That was a great song, that one. It was our first entry in the Eurovision Song Contest, shitting all over the sand. Paul Carr and Teddy Johnson.
Yes, we remember those days. Came fourth, didn't it?
Yeah.
We're talking bollocks now.
That was the one that year. Spain's entry, if I might be like that.
On Paulo Coblas. The sewage we showed you was in North Lancashire. According to the Marine Conservation Society, bathing at many British beaches is like swimming in a public lavatory, except of course it's far easier to find toilet paper in the sea. A study in June 1994 showed that Britain's filthiest beach was Mounts Bay in Cornwall, where 7% of all bathers fell ill. Scientists say that consuming a mouthful of water there has the same effect as eating 3-week-old chicken curry, possibly because a mouthful of water there does often contain 3-week-old chicken curry. Which seaside smut marks the end of this brief diversion, and the current state of the parties is that, well, Paul and Alex are looking virtually unelectable with 4, whilst Ian and Bob have a working majority of 1 with 5. And so our odd one out round rears its 4 ugly heads, from which one is to be chosen as the outstanding beauty. Paul, your 4 visions of loveliness are the back legs of a mouse, the E. coli 157 bacteria, a nematode worm, and some raw sewage.
Is the back legs of a mouse the only thing that hasn't been offered a job on Channel 5? Well, I think this is this McDonald's? Is this things that have been found in kitchens? McDonald's inventing a new cheeseburger that's got the back legs of a mouse. You order it, it comes walking towards you. And in a few years' time, it'll have a little voice box in it so it'll speak to you as you're eating it. Been drinking coffee, have we, sir?
McDonald's are notoriously litigious.
They
I
are.
know. I have proposed this as a question rather than a statement. I mean, it's things found, isn't it?
Yes, I have to own up. You are absolutely right. As we see them again, they have all allegedly been found in McDonald's food, except.
Oh, yeah, of course. Is there a beef burger there? There isn't, is there? Well, it must be the one. I'd remember that one on the bottom left. I mean, it's nibbling the lettuce. Oh, I don't know. The back legs of a mouse.
Ian, you want to have a try?
It must be the Jeffrey Archer.
The raw sewage. Yes, is the right answer, so you'll have to share the points. That's the only one that hasn't been found in McDonald's food, despite this week's courtroom allegation that raw sewage flooded the kitchen of their Colchester branch. McDonald's staff eventually cleaned the sewage up without food being contaminated, although it would have been a brave man who tried the chocolate milkshake that afternoon. The E. coli bacteria in a McDonald's restaurant was said by the Department of Health to be responsible for a major outbreak of food poisoning in Preston. McDonald's took immediate action by renaming it the E. coli muck bacteria. In 1989, McDonald's apologised to a customer who found a nematode worm in his filet-o-fish, though they insisted that the worm was perfectly harmless because it was dead, presumably because it had eaten some E. coli bacteria. In 1992, Eric Schneider took a big bite out of the McRib he'd just bought and discovered he was eating the rear end of a mouse. There's a difference at McDonald's you won't enjoy. Alex, you're four. Start with the ruler of your country, Queen Elizabeth of Britain, King Midas, Duncan Ferguson, and Wild Harry McCann.
Mild Harry McCann.
McCann.
Yeah. I think it's to do with maybe touch. It's a bad. You're not allowed to touch the Queen unless you're an Australian Prime Minister. It wasn't a good idea to touch King Midas because you turned into gold.
Looks like he's touched Duncan Ferguson, doesn't it?
But it's not a good idea to touch Duncan Ferguson because he touches you back. And Wild Harry McCann, it's not very well known, but he's a prominent Scottish faith healer, and people touch him all the time.
Is that true?
No, but
That's one of the reasons.
I'm not a comedian, you know.
You're
You're
a
a politician. It must be untrue.
the pivotal figure is King Midas, I have to tell you.
Is King Midas dead?
But he's not well, certainly.
He doesn't look well.
I think I'm going to have to give you this one, aren't I? The answer is that all of them have struck gold, except Everton's Duncan Ferguson, who struck John McStay of Raith Rovers. The Queen's geologist struck gold at her Balmoral estate in Scotland last January. She now stands to make a small fortune, but Her Majesty says she's not going to let it change her way of life. Wild Harry McCann was one of the first gold rush pioneers. All day, he and his fellow prospectors would scrabble at the earth with their bare hands, desperately dreaming of the one thing that would change their life, a spade. Bob, your four pin-ups are Piers Brosnan, Bob Holness, David Niven, and Julian Clary.
James Bond springs to mind. Is Julian Clary the only one who hasn't played James Bond, apart from Bob Holness?
Was Holness an actor before he became a Countdown host?
And he could have been anything he wanted before he became the host of Countdown, I'm sure. I don't know what he was before he became the host of Blockbusters. You started it, then. You could have let the whole French thing just go and just leave it alone, but no.
No, that is perfectly fair. I pick you up on French politics, you correct me on daytime television.
Something to do with James Bond, and I'll say Julian Clary's the odd one out. Because all the
Is eventually the right answer. Very good.
well, yes!
Yes, the answer is that all of them have played James Bond with the exception of Julian Clary. Clary has never been asked to play the role, presumably because the idea of a spy in the British Secret Service being gay is just too ridiculous. Bob Holness was the original James Bond, playing him on radio in the 50s.
Wasn't the original?
Well, he was before the others.
Yeah, but not before everybody else.
Such as who?
Barry Nelson.
Barry Nelson.
Barry Nelson played James Bond first. He was the first
Your
James
school
Bond.
player.
No. On American television in 1956.
He was the second James Bond, after the now legendary Barry Nelson, playing him on radio in the 50s. He greeted the news that Sean Connery had been cast in the film role with the words, "What sea has been given my job?" The new Bond movie starring Pierce Brosnan, after an executive decision, has had to make do with a tiny budget by Hollywood standards, but the makers promise that the climactic Jif Lemon Squeezer fight is the most exciting of the film. And finally in this round, Ian, the Labour Party conference, number 10 Downing Street, the SS Carla, and remand prisoner George X.
Number 10, a journalist from the Mirror got into. And
Did someone go in there in the Labour Party conference without a pass?
I think the whole conference got in there.
Because I'd be willing to bet that remand prison has been entered illegally at some point.
And so what happened at 10 Downing Street, just to remind us?
A Mirror journalist just got in. I mean, some bloke had been sacked who was a cleaner or a contractor. And
Ricketts.
Mr. Ricketts.
That's right.
And went to the Mirror and said, "I can get you into number 10. Should have tried Tony Blair.
George X is the odd one out.
Why?
What?
You,
I drifted off for a minute there. Traditionally, I was with it and I'd gone.
you were right with picking out number 10 Downing Street. It is the odd one out because all the others have at some point been guarded by Group 4. Although, judging by the ease with which an ex-convict got into number 10 this week, you'd think Group 4 were already in charge. Group 4 were guarding the passenger ship SS Carla when it went missing from its moorings off Limassol. A spokesman said, "It wasn't our fault, we were watching the ship from the shore." Group 4 were hired to escort George X to Preston Crown Court, but took him to a sculpture exhibition next door by mistake. Worse still, a Henry Moore original is currently serving 5 years at Parkhurst. Which signs of insecurity bring the door slamming shut on this penultimate round, and the situation at this stage is that Paul and Alex have a shriveled 5, whilst Ian and Bob boast an engorged 9. As if you needed reminding, our final instalment is the missing words round, and the rules you'll remember, so no need for me to go over them again. Our guest publication this week is the universally acclaimed International Pig Pocket. So, chopped away. I won't what Val's Cliff.
I won't slip into the sea.
I won't become the latest in long line of pop stars to shag Paulie Yates, vows Cliff Richards.
Oh, really?
Give up. Call it a day is the right answer. Next, Yeltsin keeps finger what or where?
Of whiskey handy.
on the nuclear button.
On the button.
Yeah, because he's in hospital, but he's still got the nuclear button with him.
That's going to be awkward if he rings for a bedpan and there goes...
It is on the button. The nuclear button is correct. Next, Leeson may be what in a year?
Arsenal manager.
1 year older. 3.
Is the right answer. Right, next.
Scots encouraged to drink, isn't it?
Pigs.
No.
No, swine.
No, not swine.
Big pig.
Sows.
The opposite.
Oliver Reed. Children. Piglets.
Piglets is the right answer. Got there in the end. Piglets encouraged to drink immediately after weaning when dehydration is a problem, apparently. Next, how to inject what?
Pig.
Is the right answer. Inspired guess. Next, Portillo pressed what?
Pig's dog.
Nuclear button.
Not quite that easy.
15 schoolgirls in a minibus. Jaffa orange against his forehead.
Portillo pressed trousers policy.
Pressed his trousers.
Pressed his trousers.
You may well have done, Ian, but that's not the
Devolution?
answer. No, Portillo pressed on seabed bombs, which are apparently
Which is
on...
what I said.
Wait.
No, I didn't.
No. I think you confused it with trousers.
I'm sorry.
Often
I often get up in the morning and put on those seabed bombs.
And finally, mute what for Mrs. T's birthday?
Late, piston ejected, late.
Sent by Ken Livingston.
He turned up at the pudding course.
Newt Gingrich.
No, Newt Gingrich. Yeah. He
Yes.
turned up at pudding because he was stuck between Margaret Thatcher and Nancy Reagan. So he turned up for the sweet. Sounds sensible, actually.
This is that big event. There's an empty chair next to it. Isn't that sad?
Is it late? It is late.
It's late.
And the person was Newt Gingrich, which I think Ian said, so I'll give you one each, which... hopeless.
As long as it's Newt Gingrich, it's not a bloody Newt that's been invited. Where is this pond? It's the other side of the road. It'll take ages to get here. Do you think you've got a point for that?
Mrs. Thatcher's got some funny friends. You might have a new hanging around.
So what does he do, Newt Gingrich?
Well, he's
Speaker
now...
of the House of Representatives.
Well, is that another point to Ian? Well done. We'll be quick on this game, Paul. Which, hopeless fumbling, brings us groping to the final curtain, and the upshot is that this week's hash browns are Paul and Alex with 11, and this week's divine browns are Ian and Bob with 13. So 10 quid to our winners, week's wages at McDonald's to our losers.
So how does that work? Is that new rule then we should be aware of?
Yeah, it is.
Do I get the feeling you're a touch miffed, Luke?
Well, seeing as we were about 5 points behind before we went into the last round, we did very well to end up with 1 point behind with the last question and get the last question right. So I was assuming that we had sort of pulled off a victory from the jaws of defeat. But no, we hadn't at all.
On which irrelevant note, we say thank you to our panellists, Ian Hislop and Bob Mills, Paul Merton and Alex Salmond. And I leave you with news that in London there are fears that the British Tourist Board is being too patronising to foreigners. In Birmingham, former Conservative chairman Jeremy Hanley longs for the days of Mrs. Thatcher. And there's disaster for one delegate at the UN when the Reverend Ian Paisley tries his hand at simultaneous translation. Good night.